Daphne, you pulled out such a beautiful and essential lesson of the story this morning from this parsha, and such an essential lesson too of all of Torah's teachings, which is to care for one another is what it's all about. That's what you pulled out from the lesson, that to love and to show love to our family, but also to our wider circles of family and friends. And so that was very much what was in my ears as I traveled this week to Israel. Some of us heard a bit about the trip last night. I was privileged to go as part of a small group of clergy on a solidarity mission organized by Greater Metro West Federation. We were there for just 36 hours, and we met so many people who shared with us their stories. And with Daphne, your Dvar Torah ringing in my ears, I found myself thinking about the caregiving and this Torah's message that you shared with us, that we take care of one another. And I thought about it. You talked about the end of the parsha, the third, the strawberry ice cream slice, as Cantor Kistner put it. I found myself thinking about it in the first third, a story that we read last year from the beginning of the parsha, where Avraham, who has, of course, just been circumcised at the end of the last week's parsha, is sitting petach ha'ohel at the entrance to his tent, and he sees three men approaching. And we know this famous scene where he goes and he offers them hospitality, hachnachsat orchim, caring for those who show up in our lives. And he shows them hospitality, and Sarah goes and makes them food, and they sit, and then beautiful blessings come out of that encounter. Because it turns out that actually they are not just men, not just wanderers in the desert, the nomads that Abraham lived amongst. They are angels of God, messengers from God. So the Mefarshim, the rabbis, wonder, why did they come right now? Like, this story didn't have to take place. Like, why did it take place right at this moment in Abraham's life? And they said, it must have been a Bikur Cholim visit. It must have been that God wanted to send somebody to visit Abraham while he was sick. He's just had surgery. And that's one of the things that we do for each other in community. We show up and show our caring when people are ill and recovering and need a visit to calm them, to cheer them up, to lift their spirits. So all of that is in my mind when I sat just a few days ago in Jerusalem at a hotel filled with evacuees from the town of Sderot. Sderot, which is under constant rocket fire, and now has been evacuated because it's just not safe to even be there in their safe rooms right now. The hotel is full, bursting at the seams. People have been living there for a month now, and this is all happening all over Israel. We happen to be at this hotel and another one in Mitzpe Ramon, but all over Israel, the border towns have been evacuated so that people can be safe where it's safer, and as their towns are being searched and kept safe. So you look around and you realize that it's all mothers with young children. The men of that age have been called up to serve, and there's elderly people, there's mothers, there's young children. And we sat and we met a woman named Yerushalayim, which translates to Jerusalem. What a beautiful name. And she's very, very, very pregnant. And she started talking about her two daughters, who are now 7 and 3 years old. And we heard from her some stories that showed us the levels of trauma that this people is going to be living with for the next generation. She shared that on October 7th, they were sleeping in their safe room because they always sleep in the safe room, because the safe room has become their bedroom. Ever since her youngest child suffered some serious trauma when she was 2.5, back in 2018. It was the first day of summer vacation, and the town of Sderot had built a beautiful new children's park. And the children's park was designed for people of all abilities and children of all ages, and so there were children of all abilities with parents and grandparents, and it was a beautiful summer day, and everyone was out enjoying the park, and she was so filled with gratitude and joy and gladness out there enjoying this day, and then the rocket siren went off. And the park, being in Sderot, was built with safe rooms all around, but there were so many people in the park that day that there was not enough room for everybody in the safe room. But more than that, her 2-year-old daughter was so scared of the sirens that she stiffened her body and they couldn't get her out of the swing. So she watched as everybody ran and screamed, and she watched as a rocket fell right in front of them. And she had the experience of her father yanking her and covering her with his body. And she went into extreme trauma. So the past several years of her life, Yerushalayim has spent nurturing her, hiring every trauma therapist, every speech therapist, every occupational therapist, because of the tantrums, because of the fear, because every loud noise terrifies this child. And then October 7th happened. And we heard over and over again from mothers like Yerushalayim about the regression and the trauma of their children. How she's gone back to how she was with temper tantrums. Her language is now blurry. They can't understand her, which causes more frustration. We heard from mothers whose older children have already been toilet trained. They're all back in diapers. Children aren't eating. And one of the stories that stuck with me that we heard over and over and over again, which speaks to the trauma of the mothers, was a little window into what that day was like, October 7th. Actually, by now, it's the morning of October 8th when Sderot was finally safe enough to evacuate, and they left, and they ran into their cars, and they raced out without fastening their children's seatbelts in case they needed to grab their children and run. And the children were all so scared. Ima, why no seatbelt? Why no seatbelt? And the children didn't feel safe in the car because they're used to having the seatbelt. And we heard the story over and over again. So I share this because I brought a friend with me. Thank you, Victoria. Victoria brought a friend. This is Chibuki. We learned that day in Jerusalem, we met Chibuki. Chibuki is, I don't know how we translate it, like huggy puppy or something, right? And Chibuki is a trauma therapy doll designed to give hugs. There have been 1,000 of these handed out to children, and the trauma workers are working around the country. They need 10,000 of these, and that's the kind of thing that our gifts to Greater Metro West Federation helps provide, because they then allocate to the Joint Distribution Committee and to the other organizations on the ground with needs like this. We heard from the therapist who trains the parents, who trains the mothers, why this is so effective. It's effective. It was designed many, many years ago in Israel as a mass trauma tool, mass trauma therapy tool, because one therapist can train lots of people at once how to use these. The therapist talked about the trauma the children experienced as a breakdown in the trust they have, not only the sense of security and trauma, but the parent relationship broke down. When your parents have taught you to put on a seatbelt and then they don't buckle you in. When the parents have to cover your mouth for hours on end so that no one will hear you in the safe room. So the children are deeply traumatized, as are the parents. And so the therapist said, these dolls, we give these to you so you know we are holding your hand and you will be holding your children's hands. And if you look at the doll's face, if you can see it, how does he look? Yeah, he looks sad. He looks really sad. And what happens when you see somebody who looks really sad? What do you want to do? You want to take care of them. You want to make them feel better. And so that's what this doll does. They give these puppies to the children, and the children their compassion and their caregiving instinct is elicited. And then they feel competent because they are taking care of Chibuki. And the parents, instead of talking about their child's trauma, they talk about Chibuki. No, why is Chibuki looking sad? How did Chibuki sleep last night? Is Chibuki hungry? Why doesn't Chibuki want to eat? And studies show that caregiving releases the hormones that calm us down and help us heal. The kids wear these around. They're in the hotels wearing them like backpacks. They don't want to let their Chibuki go. It's like a transitional object for them as they go. And they're keeping them close in case that siren goes off, and they need to care for the puppy who needs caring. The day after they did a training in Eilat, the sirens went off that night, and the kids all came in to their therapy, their training, preschool the next day, so proud. We saved Chibuki. I saved Chibuki. And the parents all said that during the sirens, the kids kept busy running to check on Chibuki. Kol beseder, Chibuki. Kol beseder. Everything's going to be okay. I share this again against the backdrop of the mitzvah to caregive. It's really hard to be far away, and so I just want to encourage us all to keep giving, to support the Greater Metro West Federation's Emergency Fund for Israel, to support all of the organizations that are helping people care for people there. But I also want to broaden it out. Because the message, Daphne, that you bring to us, that the Torah brings to us, is to care for one another. And there's a lot of pain in this world, and we don't have to go all the way to the other side of the earth, no matter how close it feels to us, right? We also need to remember to look around in our own community. And Daphne, you come from a family that does this so magnificently. Kevin, as past president of the synagogue, caring for community, helping us build a community that cares for one another. And Meredith, with your work day in and day out with the team running the Fabro Kosher Food Pantry, helping those in need. And I look around at this holy, beautiful crowd of people who have shown up in simcha and joy, but also, I know, in hard times. And so as we head into Musaf, I want us each to call into our hearts somebody in your life who needs a little chibuki love, a little caregiving, a little love from you, and to resolve as we step into Musaf, which will begin on page 184, to resolve to reach out to someone, to show some love and some caring this week. Amen.